Hey, it's Dougie from Valto. I've been a Microsoft Solution Architect for the past 15 years, and I've also recently been given the award of Microsoft MVP from Microsoft for my efforts of sharing content with you, both on webinars and on YouTube. And today we're going to be talking about Viva Engage. So we're going to be looking at mastering employee communications using Viva Engage, and also we're going to touch a little bit on Viva Connections as well later on. So just a quick high-level agenda of what we're going to be talking about in today's webinar. Basically, what is employee experience and why is it important? Some of the common challenges, as well as some of the facts and stats which Microsoft have provided us around this. And then I really quickly want to get on to the actual demonstrations of these products, because that's realistically what most people are here to see. So I'm going to be demonstrating Viva Engage, and I'm also going to be demonstrating Viva Connections as well. And at the end, I'm going to talk a bit about how Valto can assist you. So Valto are a Microsoft partner. We also have a adoption and change management specialization, which again is an award that's been given to us from Microsoft. If you have any questions at all as we're going along, there is a Q&A feature. If you're watching live time, there's a Q&A feature across the top. If you're watching this recorded on YouTube afterwards, then just use the comments feed below, and we'll try our best to answer all of your questions. I'll also, as I say, that live Q&A across the top, I'll be trying to stop every so often just to check in on that. So if you do have any questions, do post them in there. In fact, I'm just going to post in there just to show you where that will be. So please ask questions here. So hopefully you'll see that in the Q&A section popping up. So let's jump in. Common challenges that organizations are facing when it comes to employee communication. So disconnected teams. So ever since kind of COVID, a lot more people are working from home, remote working, hybrid working. Some days they're in the office, some days they're not. And this is proving to have some issues when it comes to communications. There can often be a kind of information overload and not necessarily knowing where to go to find what types of information. But essentially, Viva is an employee-centric experience platform, which is all about making it the employee's life better. And what we're going to be looking at today is mostly the Viva Engage side of things, which is the kind of social platform and that community feel. Which can really help with the third point here, which is the lack of engagement, which is often something, it can even lead people to leaving their jobs if they're not feeling that they're engaged necessarily with their colleagues, peers, and generally with the company as a whole. So a few stats. So 10% increase in usage of Microsoft Viva, so 110 additional employees retained annually on average for enterprise level organizations that are adopting this. Saving, I mean, that's quite a large range there, but you can see there's some large cost savings there. When it comes to looking at retention, so having a higher engaged level of employees will obviously lower the kind of costs it takes to actually then replace any employees. 18 million monthly active users of Viva, 327% return investment in 6 months, and 46% report stronger communications overall, 87% lower turnover risk, and 50% faster onboarding, 75% less time spent searching for content. So these are all stats I pulled from the Microsoft website, which have been given from studies of looking into organizations, especially larger organizations, which have deployed and properly adopted Viva Engage. So introducing Viva. So Microsoft Viva is a platform, it's a suite of products. It's not just Viva Engage, it's not just Viva Connections, it's a whole series of different products. But today we're just going to be hyper focusing on the communications element of this, which is Viva Engage and Viva Connections. So starting off with Viva Engage, so what is it? It's a central hub for communication, collaboration, and building out communities. So I'm actually just going to switch, and I'm just going to jump into a demo environment that we have already pre-set up. Now, Viva Engage, a lot of people are actually reaching out to us at the moment to look at replacing Facebook's community building area for employees. So Meta have their own kind of workspace essentially, which is being retired in August of this year. So a lot of people are reaching out to us to talk about replacing that with Viva Engage. Now, Viva Engage, it can be accessed in a number of ways. So I'm just looking at this through the lens of Microsoft Teams. You can see on Microsoft Teams, I've got my Viva Engage tab that I can easily access things through. However, you don't have to get it through Microsoft Teams. You could access this through a mobile app on a phone or a tablet. You could access it through a browser on a desktop computer. It's just a lot of organizations now are going through kind of a Teams first approach where they got all their messages, their chats, their phone calls, documents, calendars, everything they need as part of their day-to-day work is happening inside of Teams. So it makes sense to also have a tab inside of Teams, which will essentially allow you to jump straight into Viva Engage. So the main tab that we've got when we first open this is called Communities. Now, Communities essentially are the lifeblood of Viva Engage. Viva Engage isn't just one thing, it's a collection of communities. And there's actually a few different areas of communities. So under this tab, we've got My Communities, Discover Communities, and Recommended Communities. So My Communities is any communities that I'm already a member of. So I'm already inside of there. I'm already actively engaging with the content of these particular communities. Obviously, this is just a test area, so that all of these are a bit made up, but we'll take it with a pinch of salt, because actually in real life, we do have a number of these communities which are very similar. Then under My Communities, we have Discover Communities. So we have official communities. Now, to explain official communities, think of essentially a lot of social media nowadays, Twitter, well, X, Instagram, things like that, have this concept of this kind of official badge tag to say that this is a real person or a real thing. And that's essentially what we see with these communities as well. You can see these little ticks which are next to things, which show that these are official communities, whereas the ones missing those tags are unofficial communities. Well, what does that mean? Why would you have an official community or an unofficial community? So I hate to use this word, but think about kind of fake news. So like where you're seeing information, how do you know that you can trust it and it's real and essentially it's coming from the main organization? So let's say, for example, there might be a scenario where I've come across in a community somewhere something which says, oh, everyone's going to get a pay rise of £10,000 at the end of this week or something like that. I don't know, terrible example. But if I had seen that, say, in a golf community, the golf team, that's more than likely obviously just fake news essentially. Whereas if I'd seen this in the all company area, which is a official community, it's got that tick, I know that this is managed by Valto. I know that this is managed by the organization. My employer's managing this information, so it's most likely going to be factual information that I'm seeing here. I say there's a whole host of different official versus unofficial communities. Official communities are typically things like you'll have an all company community. You might have like when you're adopting a new product like Viva, you might have a community of the super users, the champions, which get together to talk about that. There might be like blogs, there might be other types of things, senior leadership updates. There's all sorts of different types of communities that you might have in there for communications, which are essentially owned and governed and controlled by the official organization, comms team, or whoever it is. Then you might have unofficial communities, which are typically owned by an employee rather than the organization. So, say, for example, like the golf team, the five-a-side football team, book clubs. I'm not really into football and things like that, but every time there's a football championship or whatever it is, often people create communities for that type of thing as well. And you don't have to have it completely like an open sort of door policy. You could have it so it's got some level of structure first, and then in time open it up to other people to be able to access things. So let's just jump in and take a little look at a community then. So I'm just going to jump into this golf team as a community. Now, one thing that Microsoft do and do pretty well is look at other competitors and other people's solutions and kind of pinch some of the really good ideas and make them into their own. So when you look at this community, it looks very much like a Facebook page. And actually, I'll keep referring back to kind of how this is quite like Facebook over time, because there's a couple of different areas as well, which is very similar. I should also mention as well that if you've ever heard of Yammer before, so a lot of people have used Yammer in previous lives. basically Yammer has been replaced by Viva Engage. It is the same product. I shouldn't say replaced. I'd say it's been renamed to Viva Engage. So if a lot of this is looking familiar, maybe in a previous job you've used Yammer or something like that, it's because it's the same product. So it's worth mentioning as well that Viva Engage isn't something that's new. It's in terms of it's not just come out and it's going to have loads of bugs or problems or things like that. It's been around for decades, but it was previously called Yammer. It's now called Viva Engage. So now inside of this Viva Engage community, you can see I can change the banner, the cover photo if I wanted to. I could change the sort of profile picture, which is here, which is actually something I often actively encourage, because then on the left hand side where you can see things like your favorites. So I've marked this here as a favorite, it will appear under favorites. I can quickly see from that little icon, I know what this is, and visually it helps me navigate a lot quicker. Then underneath you can see we've got a couple of tabs here. So we've got conversations, we've got about, so you can provide a little bit of about section, a bit of info about what that community is about, any files or events or things like that which are coming up that you can promote essentially via this community. Then we can see we can actually post inside of the community. So we're posting messages, and actually there's a few different categories of posts that you can use inside of a community. So for example, here we've got the first one, which is discussion, which is just sharing thoughts, ideas or updates, very much just like a very standard issue social media text-based post. We can tag people in there if we wanted to notify specific people, and we can do the typical types of things we can expect to see inside of a Microsoft product. So making things bold, italic, underline, bullet points, things like that, emojis and images and things like that. Or we can have topics as well. So with topics, you can essentially tag content with topics. Say, for example, you've got a internal initiative or scheme or project or something like that, and it's the equivalent of like hashtagging essentially. So you can put a topic against something, which you can then group all that content based on topic later to find a feed which is specifically just about that topic. You can also choose to actually record little videos and put those up there as well. So something else which we're actively encouraging people to do is think about video content when it comes to your communications and your communities and things like that, because everybody's used to using video content in their day-to-day lives. So they're using Instagram, TikTok, even LinkedIn now has video scrolling features and things like that built into it. In fact, you are here right now watching some video content to be part of this webinar. So people are using it a lot in their personal lives, and they're expecting this to now start flowing into their work life as well. So not just training videos and things like that, but actually having video updates and things like that. So we are often encouraging the likes of senior leadership teams and C-suite employees to actually create little short videos and things like that, which can be posted into your community. So rather than having a monthly newsletter or a quarterly update, there's a big text email or PDF or something like that, you could have instead a little video which is created. Often it can just be a senior leader that's walking to their next meeting, and they just record a 2-minute video which says something along the lines of, hey guys, this is what's going on at the moment. Maybe we've got some new clients we're onboarding, maybe we've got a new employee benefit that we're rolling out, or whatever it is, something we're excited about. I just wanted to share that update with you. Bish bash bosh, posted it. It's in Viva Engage. Everyone can see it. It's really short way of creating content. It doesn't have to be overly polished. In fact, people don't necessarily expect or want to see polished content now. They want kind of raw, authentic content. And that video being posted there will have way higher engagement rates than just a text post or just an image alone. Then the other types of posts we've got, for example, is question. So we can ask a question here. We can put in a question, bit of details in here, maybe tag it with a topic, or even tag people that we think might know the answer inside of this specific community. And that will give them a notification they can come in to respond to. Now, as I say, this is a funny little dancing GIF here. But as I say, Microsoft steal kind of some of the ideas that work really well for other kind of social medias. So one of the things which I think is a fantastic idea, which is a bit like Reddit to a certain extent, where you can post a question, say for example, where's the best place to play? I mean, I've spelled golf wrong here, but let's just pretend that says golf. And then people can then reply to this. And I say, this is just a demo. It's a terrible example, but imagine here, this is a very insightful question, and it's got hundreds of responses from all the employees of this particular organization. Now, what the community will then do is almost self-govern what the best answer to that question is by using these upvotes. So they can choose to upvote the answer that they think is the best answer. And then what will happen is the person who posted the question will then come back and see that, and they can choose to mark what they think is their best answer, which makes it much easier then in the future. And I'm going to come on to talking about, there's an area called answers that you can explore to find answers to questions that you might have, or you can use a search bar across the top, and you can basically go and look for questions that maybe you've previously asked or a colleague has previously asked, and you can get answers much easier rather than having to post the same questions again, time and time again. Also, we know that like with anything at the moment, AI is coming very fast down the line, and we're going to be seeing so much more AI rolled out across all of Microsoft. You may have heard of Microsoft Copilot, which is essentially a chat interface, a bit like ChatGPT, but it's working from all the data and information that you have stored inside of Microsoft 365. Now, because Viva Engage is part of that, I don't think it's going to be long before we start seeing Copilot bringing back answers and responses where it's seen somebody ask a question. And say, for example, I was to ask the same question to Copilot, it's going to have all that information. It's going to go away, find that information and pull it back and be able to surface that. So having all of this information that's basically collected via wherever it is, Microsoft 365, in this case Viva Engage, is just going to make AI's life a lot easier when it comes to answering questions and understanding your organization even more. So that is the questions. We've then got praise. Now, praise actually raises its head in a number of places inside of Microsoft 365. One of them being Viva Engage, but we also see it inside of Microsoft Teams as well. But essentially, praise is something that we can tag a particular employee with and put a little bit of a kind of thank you message. So what have they done? What is it that I'm thankful for? And what is it that I'm kind of praising them for? And that will get posted inside the community. So obviously, this is a fantastic way to spotlight employees, colleagues who have gone over and above their job role. Maybe they've helped you with something. Maybe they're not even part of your department and you just want to say thank you, and their line manager can see that. Also with praise, there's an area inside of Teams where you can see all of the praise that you've previously been given. So say, for example, in a PDR setting or a kind of annual review, you can pull up that praise page and say, hey, manager, look at all these additional praises that I've been given, all these additional times that I've gone over and above my job role, helped people, and I've received a praise message because of it. We then have polls. So these are like short, snappy, punchy little surveys that we can push out. Now, we use this internally quite a lot for when we just want to get a quick pulse, a quick sense check from a community or the whole organization about something specifically. Now, you could use this as just as a quick questionnaire. I've seen this used for very small things like Christmas time, when you've got your Christmas event, your Christmas party, and you're trying to find out what food people want. Do you want the turkey, the beef, or the vegetarian option, whatever it is? Or, as I say, you could use them as like little short survey kind of pulses to get kind of people's thoughts and sentiment very quickly. So we often have quarterly strategy, all hands call type meetings where we get everyone together from Valto and we talk about what's been going on, but we also talk about like employee benefits and new things that we're planning on rolling out. And we will often use these polls on the run up to those types of events, or even after, post the event, to get their feedback. So it might be like, oh, we're thinking about rolling out this. Do you think it's a good idea? Yes or no? And we get a general sense then from the whole organization what they think. We can say, what did you think of the event? Was it good? Is it too long? Was it too short? Blah, blah, blah. And we can use those and get a quick sort of snapshot using those poll options. We also have this article button. Now, this is probably the least used, to be honest, I see inside of a community, but it's basically where you can create these like little knowledge articles, bit of a title, bit of description, maybe a picture, and it's a little snippet article which lives inside of that community. Again, very powerful when it comes to Copilot. In fact, Copilot nicely integrates with this, and you can even have Copilot help draft that little article for you, or come up with more ideas. So Copilot is already starting to make its way into Viva Engage and make itself sort of making it easier to create content, find content, search, and so much more. So that's essentially a community in terms of content and things like that. I'm just going to quickly look over to see if there's any questions so far. I can see inside the Q&A area there is one question from Travis, so I'm just going to open that up. So Travis has asked, so official means someone is assigned to be a moderator. So good question. Now this kind of brings me on to this next step over here, which is around the difference between owners and members. Now, the official community doesn't actually mean that there has been a moderator assigned. That's not really what it means. It just means that that community is technically owned by the organization rather than being owned by an employee of the organization. Then what we have inside of our community is a difference between owners and members. So yes, we do have this concept of moderators. Yes, we can lock it down so only moderators can post if we really wanted to, or moderators can remove content that shouldn't be there if you wanted to. But essentially owners have that kind of responsibility of the content, and members just have the rights to come and go from a particular community. You can also have slightly different access levels to a community, and what I mean by that is the security model is very simple. It's either restricted or open. Restricted means that you have to have an invite to join the community, and open means you can just come and go from it. Anyone can come and go. Say, for example, at the golf team, this isn't going to be sensitive information. We're going to allow anyone who wants to come and go from that particular team. However, let's say, for example, one of the other communities might be we're onboarding a new project, or we're rolling out a new tool or product or something like that internally, and maybe we only want certain people to be able to access that for a certain period of time until we're ready to sort of announce that to everyone else, so we can have a more restricted model. We can see all of the members across the top right hand corner, and we've got a little bit of analysis of our communities as well on the right hand side. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about the analysis later on, but I must admit, if I'm totally honest, the analysis is very high level, so don't get too excited thinking that this is going to be incredibly granular. I have had people before ask me, oh, can we go as granular as looking at one particular employee and what have they been posting and where have they been and all that sort of stuff? And the answer is no, you can't go to that level of granularity. The analysis is more high level to see what activity has been going on, which communities are most active, what's going on in those types of frames, rather than it being about one specific employee. Now we can see the full analytics of this by clicking on this button here, which will take us through to actually the analytics tab, but it's already filtered by that specific community. So we can see these are the types of details: member activities, total posts, views on posts, messages posted, reactions on messages, community activities over time, knowledge sharing, top conversations. So it gives you a bit of an insight into the community at that kind of level. As I say, if you do have any questions, guys, make sure you're using that Q&A feature just to drop in any questions. I'll keep going backwards to show you to answer those questions. Further on the right hand side of a community, we can have things like a little extra info, even have pinned resources. So if there's any particular useful links, quick links that you think would be useful for people, they can access them via this link here. Also, every community will also have some resources automatically created. So we have things like a SharePoint library. So say, for example, if we were to store files, it needs to store those files somewhere. So it's automatically integrated with SharePoint Online to store those documents. You have a SharePoint site. So if you did want to have a SharePoint site, or even OneNote, if you were taking minutes, notes, actions of a particular meeting, you can write those drafted down inside of a OneNote. And you also have Planner. And if you're not using Planner, it's basically Microsoft's answer to Trello, where you've got these task boards, these lists. So for whatever reason, if that community needed to have a list of tasks to follow up with, they can create their own planner board as well. So that's something that we can do. So that's quickly explaining the communities. And as a quick recapper, we've got official communities which are owned by the organization. So the content there is typically a lot more controlled. And then we have unofficial communities, which are typically managed by the employees themselves, rather than from a sort of high level from the organization. So communities, relating this back then to Facebook, communities are like Facebook pages, so to speak. In fact, actually, a good example of that is most most villages, so like local villages, will have a village Facebook page, which is their community of local people talking about, I don't know, people parking in the wrong places, usually those types of silly things. But it's a community page where people are posting about different things. That's essentially what these communities are. But also, like on Facebook, where you have your own profile page, on Viva Engage, you also have your own profile page. You can change sort of background pictures and things like that. You can also see your own activity, so your own activity feed, where you've been posting and been active. You can also post as yourself, so not necessarily just to a general community, but just as yourself. You can just post in here. And again, I'm not going to cover all these off because they're exactly the same, but these are the different types of content you can create to post. You can also see a bit of a personal summary, which is essentially kind of, again, activity that you've been doing. You've also got badges and things like that, and also communities that you've been a part of as well. So as I say, we've got communities, we've got our own profile pages, and then we've also got, as I say, these answers areas. So say, for example, if I wanted to look at what questions people have been asking, things like that, I can come into here and I can see questions that have been directed to me. I can see my own activity. I can sort of search for and find answers to questions I've been previously asked. Again, relating back to kind of Facebook, if you think communities are like pages, you have your own profile page, but storylines are essentially like the main news feed, the scrolling area. And because, as I say, this is just a demo environment, we don't have a lot of content. This is a bit blank at the moment, but this is where we would see all the storylines, all the updates, thoughts, experiences from people across the organization. This is where you would see all of that content starting to appear. We then have some basic analysis. So in the analytics tab, I say this is where we can drill into sort of personal use, community use, and any sort of questions. But again, the kind of things you can drill into are essentially high level views on posts, messages posted, community activities, general kind of just activities of what's been going on. And we can kind of scope this based on 7 days, 28 days, 90 days, 12 months, or even a custom period of time as well, if we wanted to. Then on underneath that, we have our favorites. Now, favorites are just communities that we've basically marked as favorited. So that little heart message, once we tick that, that'll make our community appear under favorites on the left hand side. And then we have all the other communities that we're a part of, and we can even click on that, discover communities, which takes us back to that communities page where we can see all the other communities we're part of. The other thing as well, so we talked about official and unofficial communities, but also there'll be some recommendations. So as you start to use Viva Engage more, and it understands you and it understands what your kind of colleagues and people you work with, what communities they're part of, it'll start to recommend communities to you. So because a couple of my colleagues are part of the finance community, it said to me, oh, you might be interested in the finance community. And you can see I can quickly click on the join button here if I wanted to jump in and join that particular community. So I'm just going to look to see if there's any other final questions before I come back off talking about Viva Engage. So I'm just wrapping up the Viva Engage bit now. So if you have any other questions about Viva Engage, just drop them into the comments feed now. I'm just going to have a little look. Really good question here, which is from Adam. In what scenarios would communities replace teams and channels? Really good question. In fact, actually, it gets asked to me pretty much every time I demo Viva Engage. Let me just go back a slide because I'm still talking about Viva Engage. So good question. So the main superpower of Viva Engage is almost the thing which you could potentially say is the main con, the main thing that you would think is bad about it, which is the fact that it's simple. It's really, really simplistic. It's so simple that I've managed to demo it to you in under half an hour, and I've shown you basically everything that you can do in there. So the difference is Microsoft Teams is a lot more complicated. There's a lot more options, a lot more buttons to click. There's a lot more things that people can kind of get wrong. Often people don't really understand the concept of threads inside of Teams and how to use them properly. So people can use Viva Engage a lot easier. In fact, it's designed to let people just go off and create their own communities and kind of self-govern and make it themselves. Whereas Teams has got a lot more kind of complexities. You can do a lot more. There's a lot more features in Teams than there is in Viva Engage, but that can also be the downside. It can be harder for people to adopt and use it in this sense. So yes, there are organizations out there that use their social elements through Teams and not necessarily Viva Engage, but I would almost see it as that Teams, in an ideal world, Viva Engage is where your social, your employee comms, your kind of community feel and vibe, that's where that lives. And Teams is kept for kind of day-to-day work, projects, engaging with customers, clients, things like that. And that's where that kind of split typically comes from. But I should say that it's basically, take that with a pinch of salt, because it is slightly different for every organization. They have to find their own feet. And in fact, actually, I was giving a demonstration just this morning of Viva Engage to a client. And basically I was saying to them that don't think that you have to restrict yourself into thinking you have to know the perfect balance between Teams and Viva Engage and what should be locked down and what shouldn't be locked down from day one, because you can always change this. You can always iterate this. You can roll out more elements of Viva Engage. You can have just a small subset and then add to it over time if you wanted to. You could change your mind if something was open, but then you thought, actually, this is taking too much moderation time to remove content and things like that. You could always choose to lock it down. I mean, it's ultimately always going to come down to adoption and training people on what the best, basically what content goes where and the ways of working. How if you're coming from a previous tool like the Meta Workplace, and you need to change people's ways of working, where they're going, what content they're going to post, that sort of stuff. It's only going to come from training and adoption, and making sure people understand the different types of content and where it lives. Again, keep the questions coming in. Just got another question here from Hannah. Can you talk to me about how notifications are flagged to employees if someone posts in a channel? Yes, so you can you do get notifications. You can choose whether you have notifications turned on yourself, so whether you're following a particular community, whether you get the notifications or not. And also you have that option, as I say, that you can tag individuals. So if someone definitely wanted to make sure that someone was notified, then they can tag them in a specific post as well. I think that's another question about notifications there, so I'm hoping that that's answered that question as well. So yeah, so it comes down to, saying people get annoyed with the notifications. It comes down to training and adoption. So basically what we would do is understand how this is going to work for you, because I say not one size fits all. The way that we would typically work with our customers is understand your ways of working, what tools you already have, what experiences your employees are already used to. So whether you're coming from a different platform, what are they used to, how do they usually work it? And then we find the right balance of making sure that people get the right notifications, people understand how to follow, how to unsubscribe and things that they don't want. And we build that as part of the kind of adoption process from day one. Just looking at another question here, Ross. Okay, another question here. We launched a new SharePoint intranet last year. In your opinion, do you think adding Engage may confuse people or perhaps be seen as an overkill with too many channels? Really good question. And again, without knowing your exact setup and what you're using, what product to do different things with it, it's hard to say. It's one of those questions of how long is a piece of string. But definitely there is still a space for Viva Engage. SharePoint and what we're going to come on to talking about, which is Viva Connections, which, surprise, surprise, is actually SharePoint. They've just renamed it essentially and give it a little bit of a facelift. There's a place for both. So SharePoint should really be kind of like your platform, like a landing pad, essentially, which will help people navigate to certain content, policies, procedures, forms, marketing materials, all that sort of good stuff. Yes, you can have news articles on there and things like that, and promote events and that sort of thing, like you can in Viva Engage, but you have to kind of find what works best for your scenario and discuss that. It might be that SharePoint is slimmed down, it's more of a navigational element, but I think that probably brings us quite nicely actually into the next part of this, which is to talk about Viva Connections. And say Viva Connections allows organizations to create and personalize an engaging employee experience, which, I mean, that's a lot of the woolly speak, I guess, from the Microsoft website. But essentially what this means is you can create a landing pad, as I described. It's very simplistic. It's not overly complicated. The back end of it is actually SharePoint. So a lot of the functionality is actually from SharePoint, like news feeds and events and things like that. I'm going to jump into a demo and show you this in a moment. I'm just sort of prefixing this. But Viva Connections is essentially that kind of middle ground between a SharePoint intranet simplified and Viva Engage. So if you're going to use Viva Engage, you can use Viva Connections as a kind of a simplistic intranet homepage, which will kind of provide as that landing pad for people to easily navigate to other areas. So I'm just going to flick back into Teams. I'm just going to click onto Viva Connections, which again, I should say, don't have to get through it from Teams. It's just because we take a very Teams-centric or Teams-first type of approach. But you could access this, as I say, through a mobile app or desktop computer, browser, things like that. Now, this is what Viva Connections looks like. It's taking basically the main core elements of SharePoint, as in communication through news articles, events, things like that, but also navigation, helping people find content that they want to easily access. So you can see across up top up here, these are news articles. So these are actually news articles which we could easily slide through, and by clicking on them, it actually jumps us out and it will take us into the news article, which essentially is on our intranet. So this is a SharePoint site which is basically embedded through Viva Connections. And in fact, actually, when you click on the Connections tab, you can also open up the navigation, which actually comes directly from the SharePoint site itself as well. Oops, I'll just go back a step. Oh, hang on. Lost control of my mouse now. Where's my mouse gone? So basically, yeah. So the whole purpose, essentially, of Viva Connections is to provide that kind of that landing pad to your kind of intranet. Say you could have news articles and things like that. Hang on, so let me just open this up. Froze now. Hang on. There we go. Cool. So the home page of Viva Connections, as I say, is very simplistic. We've got the kind of news features, but we can always drill down further if we wanted to, using like the news tab across the top, or click through, which takes you into more the traditional SharePoint experience. So by clicking on this, this takes us through into the full news article. As you can see, it's got quite a lot of SharePointy kind of feel to this. Now, we can always click on this button here, which goes back to that Viva Connections homepage. Cool. So underneath that, we then have this dashboard area. Now, these dashboards are essentially made up of what they call cards, and you can pick and choose how many cards you have. They can either be these small kind of like square or more rectangular shapes, and you can kind of mix and match this to sort of customize it if you like. Now, just some examples of cards that you might want to include, things like I say we have our strategy day, and often we might want to get feedback from people, so we can click through to go to a feedback form. Praise, as I said, from Viva Engage, it's also inside of Teams, it's also inside of Viva Connection, it's in a lot of different places. So if I wanted to choose to send praise to a colleague, I can do. There's a little kind of people directory which is built into this, so I can choose and type someone's name into here to find a bit more information about them. Maybe some events, and say this is actually rolling up from SharePoint. So this is the same events web part, which is pulling through kind of maybe training, upcoming events, things like that going on. Top news. So this is our SharePoint news again. It's just summarized. Maybe OneDrive, so showing recent files that I've been working on. So this is where the kind of personalization comes into it. So this will look slightly different for every employee. Urgent tasks, so I use Planner and To Do, so this can pull through some tasks from those areas. We can even have custom links, so things like our YouTube channel. So Valto have a very successful YouTube channel, which you should go and check out if you've not already. But there's loads of videos on there, and we often encourage our employees to go and have a little look at that as well. We can embed videos from streams. So as I was saying before, we often encourage our senior leadership team to create short video updates rather than lengthy emails and newsletters and things like that. So we can have a stream channel of videos, but this could easily also be things like onboarding videos or training videos or things like that we want people to watch. And we also have quick links, which are essentially linking to maybe apps like expense request, leave request, things like that, which could also be Power Apps. So Valto are pre-created a bunch of business function things like expense requests, booking systems, leave requests, things like that as Power Apps, which can be then linked to from here. And I said this is essentially resources, so I've not got any examples in here, but you can put in little navigational sort of links as well into here as like a quick links area. Also at the bottom, it's just promoting some of the other Viva products, which are things like Viva Insights, Viva Learning, Viva Pulse. As part of that kind of Viva platform, there's loads of other products as well. So it's just kind of promoting those in that area as well. So I'm just going to go back into the Q&A area and just have a look to see if there's any questions. Looks like we've got a couple of questions here. We've got one here from Travis. I'm just going to publish and go to. So does creating a community automatically create a SharePoint site? Sounds like it's creating Microsoft 365 group, which is what creates all those other things. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you've cracked the case. It's exactly what it's doing. It's creating a 365 group and it's creating all of those resources underneath itself as well. Question here from James. On a certain community, say you created a company comms channel, can they be locked down to admin publication only and restrict comments and restrictions? Yes, you can do if you wanted to do that. It's something actually very commonly that comms teams want to be able to do, is to be able to create areas that they can publish and not have basically the feed get choked up with loads of other people posting things in there. In fact, it's actually something that I discussed with a client this morning during a Viva demo, was they didn't want to get overwhelmed with loads of different content and things like that for people posting random things on an official community area, which should have official communications and things like that. They don't want people posting pictures of their dog or the dinner they had last night and all that sort of stuff. And there's a couple of different approaches you could take to that problem. Very advanced solution for this, and we've only ever done this for very large enterprise organizations, is to build like a Power App which allows people to submit content for the comms team to approve before it gets submitted into Viva Engage. But I say that's taking things to very extreme levels. For most organizations, it comes down to education, it comes down to the adoption, and for people to understand what content lives where, and that starts at a very early stage. So as part of the adoption packages that we sell to our customers, we include things like maybe internal webinars, so actually talking to them at an early stage, giving them this type of presentation, but also tailoring it to your ways of working. So what content is going to live where. Maybe we create some things like cheat sheets, which are like a single page PDF for different communities to say, this is the type of content you will find in this community. These are things which live here. Sort of what should live there, what shouldn't go there, and that sort of thing. So there's plenty of ways that we can kind of approach that. But truly, it's about education, providing those kind of different training kind of abilities and things like that, so people are aware of what they should post and where it should go. Keep your questions coming in, guys. If you've got any other questions, we're not far off from wrapping up, so I'll check any final questions at the end. So let's just jump back into PowerPoint. There we go. So that was Viva Connections. As I say, Viva Connections is that kind of middleman between Microsoft Teams, Viva Engage, SharePoint, that sort of thing. It's basically providing that kind of platform. So typically Viva Connections, think of it as almost like a extra skin layer over the top of SharePoint. So if you already have a SharePoint intranet, it's very quick and easy to add Viva Connections over the top of that, which plugs into Microsoft Teams and provides that kind of barrier between Viva Engage and some of those other aspects of Microsoft Teams. So how can Valto help you? So we provide basically the full adoption package, which starts off with what we call, well, it actually starts off with a free consultation. So if you wanted to speak to myself or one of the other Viva experts here at Valto, you can book in a free consultation. Now I'm going to drop the link inside of the Q&A area, but also if you're watching this recorded on YouTube, the link is in the description below. But I'm just going to put this into the chat. So if you click on that link, it should take you to a form on our website. Fill out that form and you can book in your free consultation where we can speak to you about your requirements and see if Viva Engage is going to work for you, how best it will work for you, and talk through any sort of licenses issues or any of those types of concerns that you might have. Often a lot of the concerns are about restrictions, how areas can get locked down and things like that. So we're happy to answer all of those types of questions. From that, we then move into a workshop stage, which is a comprehensive full review. It's typically a full day, either on site or we can break it out into multiple remote sessions with Microsoft Teams, where we go through the introductions and set the kind of objectives of what you're trying to achieve with Viva. We give an overview of the capabilities, understand your business needs and use case for that. We're looking at preparation, so how it integrates with things like Teams, SharePoint, things which people have already asked about before. Any system dependencies, things that people moving away from previous platforms, as say Facebook, their Meta Workplace is shutting down soon, so a lot of people are jumping away from that. Talk about security, compliance, and governance requirements, as well as adoption. So things like user groups, leadership, frontline workforces. How do they have kind of this community that kind of helps them understand? Maybe some onboarding and training strategies, adoption best practices. I said we do have the kind of change management, the adoption, change management specialization. So this is something that we're doing all the time for our customers. And then we talk about next steps. So steps for implementation, responsibilities, timelines, follow-ups, fixed price deployments, proposals, and adoption packages as well. So this takes us through to our adoption packages, which start from about £5,000. This is at the time of recording. So all these costs are just at the time of recording. But essentially that would include typical things like internal webinars, training approaches. I say we have training at 3 different layers. So we have, for example, end user training, which is specific to the end users, very similar to what we've been looking at today, just the basics of what they need to know. Then we have the super user, or what we call the champion training, which is specific people from departments who get a little bit of additional training more than the average user, so that they can help support their team. And as a Microsoft partner, we want to enable you to be able to support yourself. So we even offer as a 3rd level training, which is the IT level training. So we give you all the tools, all of the kind of keys to the kingdom, essentially, to manage all this yourself if you want to. We provide kind of training around the security best practices and things like that to your IT department, so they're fully on board and they know what they're doing. We do obviously offer kind of outsourced support as well. So if you want to talk to us about having escalation points and things like that, we do obviously offer those support layers. We also can create content around cheat sheets, comms plans, things like that, to help people understand what content goes where and how the day-to-day changes to their working practices will change when they start using Microsoft Viva. So I'm just going to come through to any final questions. So if you've got any final questions, guys, please do put them into the chat. As I say, if you want to book in your free 1-hour consultation, there's a link in the Q&A, or if you're watching this recorded on YouTube afterwards, there's a link in the description below that you can click to book in your free consultation. And any questions you have, you can use the comments feed there as well. So I'm just going to look to see if there's any final questions. Do get them in, guys, or we'll wrap up very shortly. Looks like we've answered all of the questions so far. Just give a final 30 seconds to see if any final questions come through. No, looks like we've got all the questions sorted. So hopefully we hear from some of you that are looking at deploying this very soon. I'd be happy to talk through, as with a free consultation, how you're going to be rolling this out and how potentially Valto can help support you and ensure you have a successful adoption journey. Thank you very much for watching this, and keep your eyes peeled for more webinars, which we're doing on a monthly basis. Thank you.